This Sports Blitz podcast is brought to you by LMG. Grow your business through logo design, paper products, and video production. Visit leemarketing.net to learn more.
Welcome back to Sports Blitz Live, presented by JR Sports Bar and Grill and S&S Discount Tire. Here in the Auburn Blitz segment of our show, sponsored by Dane Sharp, attorney at law in Dadeville, Alabama, 825-4631 for all your legal needs. And we'll go to the Dane Sharp, attorney at law hotline. And welcome in Andy Graham here on the Auburn Blitz. Andy, thanks for joining us. Andy, you there with us? Andy, you there with us?
I'm here.
Hey, man, good to hear from you, my man. And again, Auburn and LSU this past weekend. It didn't start off pretty, but Auburn fans have taken away the second half, and they've really been positive about it. So let's start there. What does Auburn need to work on most after that 35-21 loss to LSU?
I think consistency is the best word to describe it. You know, Auburn has really looked like the same team, for the first 4 weeks. They have come out of the gate, struggled, and especially defensively, they've come out of the gate offensively and looked pretty good the last 3 weeks. But defensively, for whatever reason, they struggle in the first half, and that was certainly no different Saturday night. I don't know if it's a matter of, Auburn just eventually wearing down a team because they look so much different in the second half and play so much better. Jeremy Hill, like you said earlier, just completely gashed the defense. But he had 184 yards rushing on 25 carries, but 150 of it was in the first half. LSU as a team only rushed for 44 yards in the second half. So Auburn's defense always gets better as the game goes along, and that's good. I'm glad they're winning the fourth quarter, but there's certainly no law against winning the first half as well. So that they definitely need to work on consistency.
Well, Andy, a couple more things there, that you mentioned that we want to talk about. Auburn turning the football over on their first two drives. On the road against a team like LSU, you can't expect to win when you go down there and turn the football over. It's been a problem here early in the season.
Absolutely. And let's just face facts and call it like it is. Nick Marshall just played horrible in the first half. And I think predominantly the reason why was the weather. I mean, look, it was a monsoon in the first half, and I think that's one reason Auburn struggled so bad. And they had a lot to do with LSU, but I think the weather was the main problem. Marshall threw some passes in the first half that were as bad as any I've ever seen. I mean, you couldn't even tell who the ball was supposed to go to. It was so bad. But he turns it around in the second half and plays so much better in the second half. He went from going 6 of 16 in the first half for 31 yards to 11 of 17 in the second half for 193. So, that's part of the problem. But, the turnovers, Auburn had 3 turnovers that they continue to play loose with the football. They've done that the last couple of games. That's got to stop. They've got to have a little more sense of urgency with ball security, especially going forward in the SEC gauntlet that they're about to go on.
Andy Graham here on the Dane Sharp Attorney at Law Hotline in the Auburn Blitz segment of our show. Sammy Coates has really turned out to be a bright spot. A lot of these receivers have Andy. Jalen Denson unfortunately went down early with a knee injury, and really a twofold thing there. Not only as a receiver, as a threat to catch the football, but one of our better blockers downfield when we lost Jalen Denson. So looks like Auburn's going to have some other guys step up.
Definitely. Sammy Coates is a developing star. That 4 receptions for 139 yards. I can't remember the last time a receiver had that many yards in a game. And he's really establishing himself as that deep threat. Now, going back, Jalen Denson, it was a freak injury, but if Marshall makes a better throw, Denson's not turning himself around, trying to make an adjustment on the ball, and maybe he doesn't get hurt. But guys like Marcus Davis, I really like true freshman. I really love what he's doing so far this season. He is stepping up. You can tell that the spotlight's not too big for him. He doesn't bother him at all. You saw Tony Stevens, another true freshman, get a couple of catches in this game. I didn't really realize, until I saw him out there, how big of a guy Tony Stevens is. He's a really good-looking receiver. I think these guys are the two young guys that are going to need to step up and fill some of those slots. Now as far as blocking downfield, that's something that you really can't replace, with a freshman. Somebody else like a Javon Reed, a Quan Bray, those guys are going to have to step up and be counted.
Andy, I think the off week comes at a perfect time for Auburn. They get a chance to heal a little bit, to work on Ole Miss coming in next weekend. Ole Miss will be coming off a tough game against Alabama this coming up Saturday. I think it's a perfect time for the Auburn off week.
Definitely. That LSU game is always one of the most physical games Auburn plays all year. It has been for the last 10 years. That game, Auburn always comes out of it banged up, and it was no different. Saturday night, Robinson Therese, he was out for a while with a stinger. Coates was limping around. Corey Grant, I think, turned an ankle. So those are, a lot of guys are just banged up, and it adds to the list, for those guys that are actually injured, like a Craig Sanders and Chris Davis and Whitaker. And this is a perfect time, like you said. Auburn needs this time to heal up because they need all hands on deck. The Ole Miss game is probably, it's now the biggest game of the season because it's going to determine how Auburn, plays the rest of the season. If they win that game, definitely Arkansas and Tennessee, you expect to win those games if Auburn beats Ole Miss. So that could put Auburn, in the vicinity, around 8 wins. And that's, that would definitely be an accomplishment for Gus Malzahn and a decent bowl game. So they need all hands on deck, and this week is really going to do them some good. And plus, they'll have some more time to try to work out the kinks and find some of that consistency on both sides of the ball.
Very important stuff, and again, you're right. Next week against Ole Miss is the biggest game of the year for Auburn to this point because that will decide whether Auburn takes that next step and getting back up toward the top in the Western Division and building on a lot of this youth that they have on this team. Andy, a lot of good stuff there, my man. Look forward to talking to you next week.
Absolutely, War Eagle.
War Eagle, thank you so much. That's Andy Graham here on our Auburn Blitz segment of our show each and every week, sponsored by Dane Sharp, attorney at law in Dadeville, Alabama, across the street from the Tallapoosa County Courthouse, 256-825-4631. We'll take a break. When we come back, Randy will come back with me, and we'll talk a little bit more about this Auburn team and then the Bama Blitz coming up after that. Stay tuned. More Sports Blitz Live presented by JR's and SNS Tire right after this.